Greetings, young geographers, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Geography with me, Mr. Powell. Today's lesson is spatial distribution, and aka the physical divisions of the Earth. Basically, how are things laid out over the Earth? In the beginning, if you know what I'm saying, there was nothing. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then there were things. So how were those things spread out? And we know science tells us that things that are the way they are now was not always the case. Things have moved, things have shifted, spaces have been made. We've heard of the megacontinent Pangea before, right? Where everything was all together. And then over however many years they say, things spread out, and now we have the Earth laid out the way it is today, and it's still changing. I heard a report recently that there is a divide in Africa that's starting to take place, and there's water that's getting in between, so the part of that continent is about to move away. It's pretty wild stuff. So spatial distribution and division is just how are things laid out? How are things spaced apart? And a lot of that is honestly man-made. So let's get into it. So this is an image of the entire Earth. You could say this is we're not going to get into this quite today, but a compromise projection, and then more specifically a Robinson compromise projection of the whole Earth. You'll notice that at the poles they're very stretched out, because when you take a globe that's perfectly spherical and you stretch it out, things are going to get kind of wonky, right? So if we look at the Arctic up here and Antarctica down here, they look really, really big, but we know that in reality they're not that big. They're fairly small, especially considering this map. Now, in this satellite image, do you see any lines, like man-made lines? No, of course you don't, because they're not like lines that exist in reality. People make lines, okay? And lines are very important. They help us differentiate between regions of the Earth. Now, in this map right here, if you're familiar, this is another compromise projection right here, and this is called a Mercator compromise projection. If you look at Greenland is about the size of South America, which in reality, it's not that big. But we'll get into that when we talk about different types of maps. So this is a map of the Earth, and it's showing the different countries. So different from our last map, which was just the Earth, there were no lines. This one has lines separating regions that are countries, and everybody pretty much recognizes those boundary lines. Even if they disagree with those boundary lines, one country ends and another country begins. The boundaries are clear. Let's consider like the one between the United States and Canada. If you cross that line, like we talked about in another video, you know that you've now crossed from the United States to Canada, and you can't argue with anybody because those lines are very clear. So people take a look at a map, and they with their pen, they carve out where they want, and they go there, and as long as they can defend their borders, eventually that area can be considered whatever the conquerors called it, right? So let's look at Australia. Let's look at Australia real quick. Australia is a country, and it has its own borders. Now, what if I decided to go down to Australia and I wanted to create a new country just for me, and I'm going to call it Powellia. Ah, what a beautiful name that would be. The great country of Powellia, just on the west coast of Australia, which is not Australia anymore. This is Powellia. Do you know how you know? Because I drew a line on a map. Yep. Everything within this red line is no longer Australia. Today, on the day that I'm recording this video, Australia, that is now mine. Because I have a map and I drew lines on that map. You can't argue. There they are, right there. They are right there. Powell. And And my capital city, the first city of Powellia, is going to be called, kind of like Jamestown, I'm going to call it Timtown. Timtown, yep, that's it. Beautiful country of Powellia, the capital city of Timtown. Come on, welcome all. You should come move to Powellia. Now, do you think Australia is going to just say yes to that? I'm just going to take over and just walk over and draw a line and break all their rules, because their rules don't apply to me in Powellia. We make our own rules in Powellia. We can do what we want. Is that going to hold up? Probably not. Probably. I don't think Australia's going to like that very much, because they have control of that whole area and I don't. But I showed up. Now, if I could defend my borders, and I could be running all over here, making sure if Australia sends first they'll probably send maybe their police to be like, this guy's crazy, need to take him to jail. But then if they don't do that, then maybe they'll send maybe a small army, because, I mean, it's only me, it's just one guy. But they're not going to put up with it. And if more people move into that space and say, we're Powellians, then they're going to go to jail too, because they're breaking Australia's laws, even though they're not breaking Powellia's laws, because Powellia is not recognized by Australia or the rest of the world. Now, if I showed up with a giant army and I was able to fight off Australia and defend these borders, and also fight off any other countries that were coming to help Australia, like if the United States was like, yo, Mr. Powell, you can't do that. We're going to have to come and take care of you if you don't leave. So that would not fly with Australia. So my lines are going to be contested, because they're recognized in a way, but they're not agreed with, so that at the same time they're not recognized, not formally. But look, I even have my own flag. This is the flag, the beautiful, beautiful flag of Powellia. Isn't it amazing? All hail Mr. Powell, King of Powellia. And that's an AI version of me, apparently. So even if I have my own flag, my own country name, my own everything, I drew a line on a map, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out for me. So lines are drawn by people and are formally recognized. They're formalized when everyone else agrees to them too. Okay? If everyone agrees that, okay, this is Powellia, Mr. Powell, you're the king of Powellia, we will recognize your sovereign power and you can run your country as you wish, then cool. But if they're like, no, this is still Australia, you can't do that, then they might have a chance of taking it back, right? They've got a shot at least. I mean, I'm only one guy, but so they probably have a shot. So the same thing applies to continents. People drew lines. We drew this line around here. We drew this line around here. We decided at some point in the history of humankind how we were going to draw these lines for these different continents. So on top of that, the entire Earth is actually divided up as well using lines. In this case, we have hemispheres. The entire Earth is divided up into 8 hemispheres. And it's fairly simple. We have the northern hemisphere, which is everything north of this line called the equator. This is at 0 degrees latitude. Everything up here north of the equator is the northern hemisphere. Similarly, everything south of the equator is called the southern hemisphere. You guessed it. That's right. Very simple. The southern hemisphere is everything below the equator. Then we have the eastern hemisphere, which is everything to the right or to the east of, so my head's going the wrong way, the video's turned around, the prime meridian. So everything east or to the right of the prime meridian, all of this space here is in the eastern hemisphere, and then to the left of prime meridian, this is the west. Everything over here is the western hemisphere. But Mr. Powell, that's only 4. You said there were 8. I'm so glad you asked. Because then we have our intermediate hemispheres, kind of like the intermediate directions on a compass rose. Up here we have the northeastern hemisphere, so everything north of the equator, but also to the east of the prime meridian. So that would be only this space here, north of the equator and east of the prime meridian. We also have the southeastern, which is south of the equator and east of the prime meridian. Then we have the northwestern hemisphere, which is everything north of the equator and west of the prime meridian. And of course, the southwestern, which is south of the equator and west of the prime meridian. So pretty simple there, but humans drew these lines. They were not there already. So we draw these lines, we divide up the entire Earth as a whole, then we draw lines around what these land masses that we're going to call continents, and we name these continents. We decided as humans there were going to be 7 different regions of land masses. The 7 continents are North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica. Now, sometimes you might hear Australia referred to as Oceania, or maybe Australia and Oceania, or Australia/Oceania. This is because Australia, as we know, is an actual country, like we were talking about earlier. Whether Powell thinks it's there or not, the whole island right here is Australia. But see these islands out here, these islands are not part of Australia as a country. They're not Australian. So Oceania basically includes these islands over here that are not part of Asia. So these islands are part of Oceania, and Australia is a part of Oceania too. So if you say Australia or Oceania, it's kind of the same thing. But just understand these islands are not a part of the country of Australia. I think New Zealand, I believe that's New Zealand right over here. Beautiful country. Lord of the Rings was filmed there. I'd love to go. But that's their own country. New Zealand is its own country. Australia is its own country, but they're all part of Oceania together. And then, of course, we have our oceans. We have 5 named oceans. Now, wait a minute. I only see one big blue wet thing right here. You may not get that joke. That is from a movie I used to love when I was a kid. It was called Muppet Treasure Island. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe your parents have talked about it, mentioned it to you. It's a great movie if you ever want to watch it. But there's a character on it that refers to the ocean as the big blue wet thing. There's a whole song about it, the big blue wet thing. So it's all one ocean really, right? All the water is the ocean. But humans decided to divide up areas of the ocean to be a little bit more precise when talking about where things are. So here we have the Pacific Ocean. Here we have the Atlantic Ocean. And simply because part of it is north of the equator and the other part is south of the equator, some maps divide it up as to the North Atlantic and the South Atlantic, or the North Pacific and the South Pacific. It's all the same ocean. There's just one Pacific, one Atlantic Ocean. But because there's north and south equator, some maps divide them up that way. Then we have the Indian Ocean, and that's easy to remember because this area right here is the country of India. So if you know where India is, then the ocean India is right next to it. Then we have the the Arctic Ocean up here. Then we have it's not on this map, but there's another ocean, the Antarctic Ocean, or the Southern Ocean down here. Now, you notice that there's a Pacific Ocean over here and a Pacific Ocean over here. Are those different oceans? No, it's the same ocean. Because remember, this is a map, and a map is flat. But if we turn that map back into a globe, it's going to go all the way back around. So these two parts, the two sides of the Pacific Ocean, they're going to touch. So it's all the same ocean. So that's why. And that concludes our video for the spatial distribution. Basically, that means is how are things on the Earth laid out? How are they spaced out? There's a lot of stuff you can do with that, but that's all we're going to talk about today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and can't wait to see you on the next one. So remember to, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good day. And it goes ba-da-bum-bum, ba-da-ba-da-bum-dum-dum. Greetings, young geographers, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Geography with me, Mr. Powell. Today's lesson is spatial distribution and AKA